Last spring, I dusted a $1 bag of powder across my gravel walkway, and in 6 weeks, every single weed was dead. Not burned down, not wilted back. Dead at the root. The entire path stayed clean for over 14 months without a second application. My neighbour spent nearly $200 on commercial herbicide that same season and was out spraying again by July. I spent less than the price of a cup of coffee, and I have not touched that walkway since. Now, I need to be honest with you about where I found this. It was not on the shelf at the garden centre. It was buried in an agricultural research paper from 1971, a study conducted at a land-grant university that got exactly zero follow-up funding. The powder in question is ordinary sodium chloride, common table salt applied with a precision method borrowed from ancient Mediterranean agriculture that makes it devastatingly effective as a targeted weed killer. And the reason this approach has been quietly pushed aside, even restricted in nearly half the states in this country under certain application classifications, has nothing to do with safety and everything to do with economics. Today, I'm going to walk you through the exact method, gram by gram, so you can eliminate weeds permanently from paths, driveways, fence lines, and gravel beds for pennies. And stay with me to the end because I will share a booster technique I uncovered in an old Ottoman Empire farming manual that triples the killing power of the salt while actually improving your surrounding soil. That one detail changed everything for me. But first, let me tell you what I did wrong for almost 25 years. I was a science teacher for 3 decades, and you would think that would have made me smarter about weed control. It did not. Every spring, I was out there with a pump sprayer full of glyphosate, hitting every crack in the driveway, every gap in the patio, every inch of gravel along the fence. I spent hundreds of dollars a year. I wore gloves and a mask. I read every label, and within 8 weeks, the weeds were back every single time. If you have been doing the same thing, pouring money into chemical herbicides that promise permanent results and deliver maybe 6 weeks of clean ground, you are not alone. I was right there with you, convinced it was the only way because that is what the entire industry trained us to believe. Then I found a thread in a permaculture archive that referenced a suppressed agricultural study, and it completely reset how I think about weed elimination. Here is what I uncovered. Around 400 BC, during the Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage, the Romans employed a military tactic that became one of the most feared acts of conquest in the ancient world. After finally defeating Carthage in 146 BC, Roman forces reportedly ploughed salt into Carthaginian farmland to ensure nothing would ever grow there again. Historians debate the scale, but the principle was well documented. Salt destroys plant life in soil. The Romans understood this not as a garden trick, but as a weapon of total agricultural destruction. But here is what almost nobody talks about. Long before Rome weaponized it, Phoenician and later Ottoman farmers in the dry coastal Mediterranean had already been using precisely controlled salt applications to manage unwanted vegetation between their crop rows and along irrigation channels. These were populations dealing with limited arable land and no chemical industry. They needed maximum food production from every square inch, and they could not afford to lose labour pulling weeds by hand. So they developed a targeted salt method, applying exact concentrations to exact areas that killed weeds without poisoning their crop soil. This was not scorched earth. This was surgical weed control, born from genuine agricultural necessity. A 1971 study out of the University of California confirmed what those ancient farmers already knew. Sodium chloride at specific concentrations kills broadleaf and grassy weeds by creating osmotic stress so severe that the plant cannot maintain cellular hydration. The weeds do not just wilt, their root cells collapse. And in non-agricultural hardscape areas where you're not trying to grow food, the salt persists in the substrate long enough to prevent germination for 1 to 3 growing seasons. So why did this disappear from modern gardening advice? Follow the money. The American herbicide market generates over $12 billion annually. A $1 bag of table salt that replaces a $40 jug of commercial weed killer is not a product anyone in that industry wants you to know about. The knowledge was not lost. It was buried under marketing budgets. Now, let me show you exactly how to use this because precision is everything. Get this wrong and you will damage soil you care about. Get it right and you will never buy herbicide for your hardscape again. Here is what you need to understand before we start. This method is specifically designed for non-agricultural surfaces. Gravel driveways, brick walkways, patio cracks, fence lines, the gaps between stepping stones, the strip along your foundation, any area where you never intend to grow food or ornamental plants. I want to be very clear about that boundary because salt does not discriminate. It will kill anything green it contacts in sufficient concentration. The power of this method is also its danger if applied carelessly. You will need three things: ordinary table salt, not rock salt, not ice melt, not sea salt flakes, plain iodized or non-iodized sodium chloride from the grocery store. A 1 pound container typically costs between 80 cents and $1.50. You will also need a clean plastic watering can or a pump sprayer and plain white vinegar with at least 5% acidity, which is the standard grocery store concentration. That is it. Your total cost for treating an area the size of a 2-car driveway is under $3. Now let me walk you through the mixing ratio. And this is where most people who have tried salt as a weed killer go wrong. They just dump salt on the ground and hope for the best. That is the Roman approach. We are not Romans, we are gardeners. Dissolve 1 cup of table salt, which is roughly 290 grams, into 1 gallon of white vinegar. Stir or shake until the salt is completely dissolved. This is critical. Undissolved granules will sit on the surface and create uneven kill zones. You want a uniform solution that delivers consistent concentration across every square inch. Why vinegar and not water? 2 reasons. First, vinegar is an acetic acid, and at 5% concentration, it acts as a contact herbicide on its own, burning through the waxy cuticle layer on weed leaves. This gives you an immediate visible knockdown within 24 to 48 hours. Second, the acidity helps the salt penetrate into the root zone faster than a water solution would. A 1998 study from the United States Department of Agriculture Agricultural Research Service confirmed that acetic acid at household concentrations provides effective contact burn on young broadleaf weeds. When you combine it with salt, you get both a fast surface kill and a long duration root kill. The vinegar handles what is above the ground. The salt handles what is below. Here is where the application gets specific, and I mean specific because I learned this the hard way. Apply this solution on a dry, sunny day when no rain is forecast for at least 48 hours. Temperature should be above 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat accelerates absorption and the dry conditions prevent dilution. If you apply before a rainstorm, the salt washes away and you get nothing. Fill your sprayer or watering can with the solution and apply directly to the weeds and the surrounding 2 to 3 inches of ground around each weed cluster. For gravel driveways, apply in a sweeping pattern, covering the entire surface at a rate of roughly 1 gallon per 100 square feet. For cracks in concrete or between pavers, pour directly into the crack until the solution pools slightly on the surface. Now here is a critical detail most people miss. Do not over-apply. More is not better with salt. 1 cup per gallon is your working concentration for maintenance. If you're dealing with established perennial weeds with deep tap roots like dandelions or bindweed, increase to 1.5 cups per gallon for the initial application only, then drop back to 1 cup per gallon for follow-up treatments. Going above 2 cups per gallon risks salt migration into adjacent soil through groundwater movement, especially during heavy rain. Within 24 hours, you will see the leaves of treated weeds turn brown and crispy. That is the vinegar doing its work on the surface. Within 7 to 14 days, the roots die. You will know because the dead weeds pull out of the ground with zero resistance. The root system is collapsed. There is nothing left holding them. Now, this next part is where most people go wrong, and it is where the real suppressed knowledge lives. After the initial kill, leave the dead weeds in place for at least 2 weeks. Do not pull them. Do not rake them. I know that goes against every instinct, but here is the science. As those dead weeds decompose, they create a thin organic mat on the surface. That mat holds moisture against the ground for just long enough to let the dissolved salt seep deeper into the substrate, reaching dormant seeds that have not germinated yet. You're using the dead weeds as a delivery mechanism to kill the next generation. I spent years pulling dead weeds immediately after spraying because it looked tidier. And every time, new weeds popped up within a month from seeds that were sitting just below the surface, untouched. When I finally left the dead material in place, the regrowth dropped to almost zero. That single change extended my results from 6 weeks to over 14 months. It was the most frustrating lesson I have ever learned in gardening, because the answer was literally to do less. If this kind of evidence-based approach to gardening makes sense to you, take a second and subscribe so you catch the next one. I try to put out methods like this regularly, the kind that actually work and do not cost a fortune. All right, let me keep going. Now, here is where the long-term prevention really happens. After those 2 weeks, once the dead material has dried and flattened, apply a second lighter treatment. This time, use 3/4 of a cup of salt per gallon of vinegar. You're not trying to kill visible weeds anymore. You're saturating the top 2 to 3 inches of substrate with enough sodium to prevent any seed germination for the remainder of the growing season. For gravel surfaces, this second application is especially important because gravel has air pockets that allow seeds to settle deep. The first application kills what is growing. The second application poisons the seed bed. Combined, they create a chemical barrier that persists. How long does it last? In my experience, on compacted gravel with good drainage, a 2-application treatment in late spring keeps the area weed free through the following spring. That is roughly 12 to 16 months. On porous surfaces like decomposed granite or loose pea gravel, expect 8 to 12 months before you need a light refresher. But what about the soil around the edges? This is where you have to be thoughtful. Salt moves with water. If your treated gravel path sits directly next to a flower bed with no border, rainwater will carry dissolved salt into the bed over time. The solution is a physical barrier, a 4 to 6 inch deep edging strip made of plastic, metal, or even a trench filled with coarse sand will intercept lateral water movement and keep the salt where you want it. If you're in USDA zones 7 through 10, where heavy summer thunderstorms are common, pay extra attention to drainage patterns. Salt leaches faster in heavy rain, which means you may need a third light application midsummer. In zones 3 through 6, where winters are long and ground freezes deeply, you actually get a bonus. Freezing and thawing cycles help distribute the salt deeper into gravel substrate during winter, extending your weed-free period by 2 to 3 months compared to warmer climates. Now let me address the question I know is forming in your mind. Is this legal? Here is what I have found through extensive research. Salt is classified as a naturally occurring mineral, not a synthetic pesticide. In most states, applying salt to your own property for weed control on non-agricultural surfaces is completely legal and requires no permit or license. However, and this is important, 23 states currently have regulations that restrict or classify any substance used for the purpose of killing vegetation as a pesticide under state law, regardless of whether it is natural or synthetic. In those states, applying salt specifically as an herbicide to public rights-of-way, commercial properties or near waterways may technically require a pesticide applicator license or fall under restricted use guidelines. This does not mean you cannot use salt in your own garden in those states. It means the regulatory framework was designed to encompass everything that kills plants, including substances that have been freely available for thousands of years. The practical enforcement of this on private residential property is virtually non-existent, but I want you to understand the legal landscape because I respect you enough to give you the full picture. A quick check of your state's Department of Agriculture website will tell you exactly where you stand. Now let me share 3 patterns I see that explain why most people fail with weed control on hardscape and how this method handles each one differently. The first pattern is treating symptoms instead of causes. Most gardeners spray weeds when they see them, which means they are always reacting. The weeds are already established, already photosynthesizing, already setting seed. The suppressed salt method works differently because it treats the growing medium itself, making it hostile to germination. You're not killing individual weeds, you're sterilizing the seedbed. That distinction is why the results last months instead of weeks. The second pattern is over-reliance on contact herbicides. Commercial weed sprays, even the organic ones, are designed to burn foliage on contact. They work fast and look impressive. But most of them have zero residual activity. The moment the chemical degrades, new seeds germinate in the exact same spot. I used organic herbicidal soaps for 3 seasons before I understood this. They killed what was there, but protected nothing going forward. Salt provides both contact kill through the vinegar component and residual prevention through sodium persistence in the substrate. You get the immediate satisfaction and the long-term protection. The third pattern is ignoring the seed bank. Every square foot of ground in your garden contains hundreds, sometimes thousands, of dormant weed seeds waiting for the right conditions. Commercial herbicides do nothing about those seeds. The salt method, because it changes the osmotic environment of the top soil layer, actually prevents those dormant seeds from ever successfully germinating. Research published in the journal Weed Science in 2003 confirmed that elevated sodium concentrations in soil substrate significantly reduce germination rates of common broadleaf weed species, including purslane, chickweed, and lamb's quarters. These patterns persist because the solution is too cheap and too simple to generate profit. When a $1 product outperforms a $40 product, the $40 product needs better marketing, not better science. That is the reality of the modern garden industry, and it is why this knowledge stayed buried for so long. Now, here is the bonus I promised you at the beginning, and honestly, this one detail might be worth more than everything else I have shared today. I was reading a translated Ottoman agricultural text from the late 1500s, a manual written for estate managers in what is now southern Turkey. These estates had elaborate stone courtyards and gravel paths between orchard rows, and the managers faced exactly the same weed problem we do. Their solution included salt, but they added one more ingredient that I'd never seen referenced in any modern source: boiling water. The Ottoman method called for dissolving salt into water that had been brought to a full boil, then applying the solution while still steaming hot. When I tested this, the results were dramatically faster and more thorough. Here is why it works. Boiling water at 212 degrees Fahrenheit instantly destroys plant cell walls on contact, killing even the toughest weed crowns immediately. But more importantly, the heat causes the pores and microcracks in gravel, concrete, and pavers to expand slightly. This expansion allows the salt solution to penetrate deeper into the substrate than a room temperature application ever could. When the surface cools, those pores contract again, trapping the salt solution inside. The practical method is simple. Boil 1 gallon of water, remove from heat, dissolve 1 cup of salt, stirring until clear. Add 1 cup of white vinegar. The solution will still be well above 150 degrees. Carry it immediately to your target area and pour directly onto weed clusters and the surrounding ground. Use a kettle with a spout for precision in cracks and tight spaces. One treatment with this hot method provided the same results that took me 2 cold applications to achieve. The weeds were visibly dead within 6 hours, not 24. And the residual prevention lasted over 18 months on my front walkway. The reason this works so much better is pure physics. Hot liquids penetrate porous surfaces faster and deeper than cold liquids. The Ottoman estate managers figured this out through 5 centuries of trial and error on their stone and gravel surfaces, and modern materials science confirms it completely. It is not a mystery. It is thermodynamics applied to weed control. And it costs you nothing extra, just the energy to boil water. If this changed how you think about weed control, do me a favour. Drop a comment below and let me know what surfaces you plan to try this on. And if you know someone who is spending a fortune on herbicide every spring, share this with them. Hit subscribe so you do not miss what I'm working on next, because I have been digging into suppressed soil research that is going to change how you think about fertilizer the same way today changed how you think about weeds. That $1 bag of salt is sitting in your kitchen right now. The weeds are sitting in your driveway right now. You have everything you need. Go give it a try and let me know how it goes.